Hello. We are so happy to be here today with Miss Romana Mathews. And Miss Romana Mathews is an educator. And she is an educator who has successfully implemented social emotional learning into her classroom. And we're so happy to have her here today. Hello, Miss Mathews.
Hi, thank you for having me, Dr. Hudson.
Thank you so much for being here. So let's start with you just kind of introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about you.
Well, as you stated, my name is Romana Mathews. I am a graduate of two HBCUs, the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff, as well as Alabama A&M University. I am a family consumer science educator. I have been teaching for 7 years. And I recently, in partnership with my brother, opened up a family-owned restaurant called Mona Joe's after my father. His name is Joe. So within the school climate and culture of the day, I'm over student council. I'm over SEL. So I'm over hosting the events that the students want to go viral, their proms, their homecomings.
Right.
So I have the pleasure of working closely with the student body. So that's pretty much what I do, as well as I'm a doctorate student attending the University of Memphis.
Oh, nice. That's wonderful. Great. Well, let's just jump into our topic for today. We're talking about social emotional learning. And Ms. Mathews, in your opinion, what would you define or how would you define social emotional learning?
In simple terms, social emotional learning to me is nothing more than taking care of our mental health. Being able to recognize things that's within our control and things that are not in our control. Being able to realize that challenges will occur, but how do we unpack that baggage and not have to do it alone?
Awesome. That is a wonderful definition. You know, we think about it, we work with our students in this day and age, and we want to ensure that they learn all that we have to impart upon them. But if they don't have social emotional learning under control as far as understanding what it is and how to deal with those emotions, what are they going to learn? You know, it's like, how can they learn if they have all of these emotions and thoughts going on and they don't know how to sort them? They don't know how to deal with them in a positive way. And they are with us so much of the day. So it's so important that we actually help them with that as well. That's a part of the educational process.
I agree. It's just dealing with the whole child. How can I expect you as an educator to come to my classroom, learn these academics? However, you were hungry last night, or mom didn't come home, or dad didn't come home last night, or you had to watch a parent pass away, or a parent be arrested. We have to deal with the whole child. And I believe that that's pretty much what it is realizing that they are humans just as we are. Just because we're adults and they're not yet at that stage, even in adolescence and younger, there's still come issues and challenges. And we got to help them, give them some healthy tools to cope through them.
Absolutely. So I know that you have been very successful with implementing social emotional learning strategies into your classroom. So could you tell us a little bit about what those strategies are and what social emotional learning looks like in your classroom?
Social emotional learning in my classroom first starts with relationship building. I am very transparent. And when I first started teaching, I remember being a little emotional because I am a very compassionate person. And so I can recall just being emotional one day after losing the loss of a loved one, and the student was a little insensitive to that. And I recall one of the building administrators saying, "This is why I don't believe teachers should talk about what goes in their personal lives." So it put me in a place where I felt like, but I'm hurting. I'm human. I'm not allowed to hurt because I'm a teacher. And so that was something that I actually let go in one ear and out the other. And I could just continue to be transparent with my students. And just as I had to realize I go through things, also understand that they go through things. I did forget to mention that I serve as the site coordinator for the Children's Defense Fund.
Oh, okay.
So with that, it's restorative justice practices in that literacy program. So after my first year of teaching, I took a lot of those techniques and incorporate them in my own classroom setting. So that was all about us having that restorative justice, us being very uplifting, us being team players. And so when I took all of those things and put them into my classroom, it made, like, I don't even have write-up slips anymore. And I really pride that I do not write up students, because as a novice teacher who went the non-traditional route of being an educator, I didn't have the blueprint. I had to figure it out. And what I was originally being told was the blueprint was trying to tell me that I was not allowed to express myself. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to make it in this field. Especially around the topics that we discuss. We discuss conflict resolution. We discuss rape and healthy and unhealthy relationships. And so the biggest thing is me showing up as my authentic self and allowing my students to do the same. And that's what we do in my classroom. And I have been able to implement a lot of techniques that the students love. What some of those techniques look like, last year, I brought a counselor in, and my students were emotional. And so I said, well, I see that they're dealing with things. Now that the counselor is gone, I cannot act like those things went away. So I created this brown bag, and I asked my students to write what they're feeling on that bag. And I required everybody to write, and I told them if they wrote their name on it, that meant they wanted me to write them back. Otherwise, you did not have to put your name on it, and you just got it off your chest. I don't know who you are. And so, to my surprise, when I went through that bag, there were a lot of names. So I stayed really late that day at work, reading the letters, writing every student back. And I found that the hardest ones to address was the ones with no name on them. Because to me, it just came off like it was a cry for help. I didn't know how to help them because I didn't know who they were. So, but the word spread. They started to tell other students. So students who did not have my class started passing me letters in the hallway and asking me, could you write me? Could you write me? And it would be things like, could you help give me some coping skills?
Wow.
As I'm still dealing with the loss of my grandmother. I had a lot, and I felt like I didn't have all the answers. I felt like I didn't have many resources, but I tried my very best. And that has followed me over into this school year. I wanted to get creative that was something that I waited till we got to that unit. I didn't want to start my school year off like that. So instead of doing a traditional all about me, it's still early on in the school year, I said, well, we're going to switch it up. And I created a coloring sheet. And on that coloring sheet, it said, it's okay. Well, I found the coloring sheet. It said, it's okay to have a bad day, but I made a coloring guide to go along with it. And in that coloring guide, I had things like color blue if you're worried about having a job and being successful as a student. Use black if you're grieving. Use yellow if you want to be closer to a parent. Use brown if you want to make good grades. And so I gave that to my students just last week, and they took it serious. I had a student to ask them, can I use all the colors? And it was a new way for me to know, who am I dealing with? Who am I going to be serving this year? But it also allowed them to know I have a teacher that cares.
Absolutely.
So that's what some techniques look like. And that's kind of how I got there to want to incorporate that in my classroom.
both of those activities are so powerful in that, going back to the brown bag that you created, it was a wonderful way to, number one, build rapport and say, without saying, I'm here for you. I want to know what's going on with you. I love that there was that option of anonymity. It's, you don't have to put your name on it, but get it out. And how powerful that one activity can be, like even incorporating the school counselor in it. Like you said, there's some kids who chose to remain anonymous, but you see this need. And to even bring it to, the school counselor and say, hey, we've got some kids with these challenges. I don't know if we need to do small group or individual, send something home in the newsletter of how to help your child through this, that, and the other. But it's a jumping point, it's a beginning. And it's wonderful. It's a wonderful way to reach kids. Like, I just started smiling when you talked about the fact that kids that weren't even in your class were like, can I get a letter? Can I connect with you? That speaks volumes, that there are students who need an adult in their life, who want an adult in their lives, and who gravitate towards positivity.
Yeah. And though this was a technique I started just this year, when I saw how helpful and productive it was, it's something that I feel like I definitely could use on different platforms. I was invited to speak to a group of college students this weekend. It was something that I was even able to make age appropriate for what they may be going through. And I was able to come up with some real healing is what I think is going to be. I present to them this weekend, and I came up with something that I think that they're going to like. But I did incorporate that same scenario, but I just put it to their age group because I think it's going to allow them to share their story.
Absolutely. And even, with the coloring, it's perfect for younger kids. They can't always name an emotion or feeling, but they can relate to the scenario you gave them. If you're sad because you've lost someone, use this color. Or, if you'd like to talk to an adult, use this color. I mean, there's so many different things you can do with that. And it's powerful. And I think about, when I was a counselor, I used to have like a little basket. I was in a high school with what they thought were kiddie toys. And, I had a coloring book with a box of crayons, and they'd be like, why do you have this in here? And I'm like, it's just leftover from when I had elementary. But sure enough, every year there would be several kids throughout the year who sat down and began to color, or sat down and started playing with the Play-Doh and began to talk, to unload and express themselves. So it's a wonderful way to get them to open up and be vulnerable in those moments.
Absolutely. And sometimes you don't have all the tools, but you got to use what you have.
Yes.
I had a student just yesterday say, Miss Mathews, do you have a stress ball? And I was like, would your hand hurt? And she said, no, I'm stressed out. I said, well, I mentioned that I'm over at student council, so I have all the decor, and we use those Orbeez, those water bees.
Oh, yes.
I said, well, hold on real quick. I went and got those water bees, and I filled them up in the glove. I said, will this work? She said, yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. And so
yes.
Sometimes you just got to make something out of nothing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So have you, has your school embraced the SEL, or is it just in your classroom? How is it looking in a broader sense?
It's an individual preference. some people incorporate it and they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not anything that's introduced from a wider spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we do have another teacher who's really into it also.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, it would be the teacher having it and learning it and becoming more familiar to incorporate it.
Right. And I know in my particular school district, we are working on implementing SEL on a district level, on a organizational level. But you said something very key there. You said that, some teachers are doing it and don't even know it. And I think that, sometimes people think, oh, it's another thing to do, and as educators, it's very true that there's always something to do. Your plate is always full. And some see it as just another thing on my plate, but it actually begins to clear your plate when you incorporate it into what you do. What is your experience with that?
Absolutely. I actually wasn't always familiar with the term SEL.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why when I'm now asked how I feel about SEL, I'm thinking, oh, how am I taking care of my mental health? Because to me, it's what it is. However, I do feel the need for SEL.
Mm-hmm.
If that's what we're going to call it, let's do it. However,
right.
As long as our goal is the same, as long as the outcome is positive, I think we need it.
Mm-hmm.
My experience with it was I didn't realize I was an SEL teacher. I didn't realize I was doing it, but I knew I cared about my students' well-being and their mental health. That's what I did.
Right.
And so when I did become introduced to it, as I was a part of the inaugural cohort for Teach Plus Arkansas last year,
mm-hmm.
that's when I really became familiar with the term SEL. Mm-hmm. And one of my things was, well, it sounds like it's something new. And it sounds unfamiliar because we're not calling it the same thing. Some people are calling it mental health. Some people are calling it SEL. Mm-hmm. First off, everybody need to know, what are we dealing with? What is it that we want? So for some people, we just don't know what it is because we're unfamiliar with the term. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't like to say that I was just ignorant to the fact of I care about my students' social and emotional health. However, that was a term that I had never heard, especially in the school setting, which is where it lies. So,
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think what you're saying is important because, yes, it might be a new term, and it is a new term for so many people. But if we go back to the root of it, the brass tacks, it's what you said in the beginning. It's educating the whole child. And, when I began many moons ago in education, school counselor, there wasn't the term necessarily, SEL. We knew about social emotional within the realm of school counseling, but, as a whole, incorporating the school, that just wasn't a thing. But we were always taught that, if a child is struggling in some part of their life, as you mentioned, they're not eating, or there's war at home, or what have you, how can you expect them to learn in your classroom?
Exactly.
So it's building that rapport with students, and it's having that connection and that care to say, I care about all of you, not just, did you do your math homework? Did you do your science? Did you do whatever? I'm looking at you and you look like something's going on. Or I take the time to do the activities in class where you let me know something is going on. And that's a big one because, we have kids in class who they come to class, they're doing their work, so you're like, oh, well, everything's fine with them. That's the ones that don't get the attention they need sometimes.
Absolutely. I had the opportunity to lead our professional development for our back to school training this year. And my topic was the threshold. And I was supposed to be letting the teachers know why it's important for us to stand at the door and greet our students.
Mm.
And really what I gave them was a toolkit that was going to help them build relationships. I gave all of them a toolkit to be a SEL teacher, incorporator is what I gave them, because I didn't talk about be at the door so you can catch students fighting, or, just be at the door because I want you at the door. I used some real life scenarios to let them know how if we don't greet them at the door, if we don't give them our expectations, we're going to lose some of them.
Yeah.
Some of them are going to go in, they're not going to be ready. We're not asking them about their day. We get complimenting them, make a student feel good, notice something about them. That lets them know that you're paying attention to them, that they matter. And we can't just speak to some of the students, because then it's like, they don't speak to me. They don't acknowledge me when I come in the classroom, and it's going to trickle into the lesson. Now I'm in the back of the room. You're calling on them. You're not calling on me. It's just like I'm a ghost in the back of the room. You do not see me. You didn't see me come in. You didn't see me as I perform here. A student has the potential to feel undervalued. And so I look at any situation and how can we make it about the student having the student feel welcomed. So yeah.
Definitely. And the side effect of that is the joy that it brings to you as an educator. Positivity it's infectious.
Yeah. I have affirmations all in my room. And honestly, how they started was based off the color. I love rose gold. And so I was like, I didn't want to be selfish with my rose gold. I wanted to still cater to all of my students with my rose gold classroom. But I started with affirmations, and now I'm intentional. And when I started this year, we're the winning circle. So I've channeled in their positivity, and I'm letting them know we're all winners here. We're all going to jump through these. We have a track theme where we're going to jump over these hurdles together. We're going to make sure that we stay in our own lane and that we stay on track of learning.
Love it.
And those affirmations, you speak that piece, you're going to my classroom. It's a calm setting. I'm always playing music that's positive. It's a vibe. Doing parent-teacher conference, I have parents that say it's a vibe in here. And I'll be like, hey, I'm ready for them.
Yes.
I'm ready for them. And you have to surround yourself with people who have that, who want to serve, who want to be there. Yes, I would have liked me another week off and maybe got to go visit Jamaica or something, but hey, it's time to go back to school.
Yes.
And so now that I have you, I'm ready for you. I'm happy to have you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when you talked about earlier, setting the expectation and letting them know, that's a part of it. I'm setting the expectation that in my classroom, we're going to have positivity and we're going to strive to be excellent and we're going to reach that excellence. That's all a part of it. And letting a kid know, it's like, there's a phrase that's, up in my office somewhere, and it goes something like, my teacher, expected me to be better. And I was,
Yeah. I had a young lady today. I saw her in the office. I don't have her until 7th period. And it was that whole battle of, policing their body. You got on those leggings. And so when I saw her later on, when it was time for my class, she then had on jeans, but she was upset. I heard her say, "These are so big." I said, "Hey, I need you to check your energy before you come in here." She immediately started smiling. She said, I'm ready, Miss Mathews. Because I told them, I said, hey, check your energy in here. We're not talking about people. One of my rules is we're not roasting. We're not going to make anybody feel like they're less than. We're going to be empathetic. We're going to put ourselves in the shoes of others in this classroom. So
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that because, even if you do have a school-wide social emotional learning program going on, you can boost it, enlighten, enrich it within your environment, within your classroom. And like you said, many of the tools that you have, you can take those wherever you go. and, empowering people, that could be from grade kindergarten through age 99, so it's important. And those are things, there are easy ways to incorporate that into what you do.
And I love what Tabitha Brown says. If you can't have a good day, then don't go messing up nobody else's. So I've been starting to share that affirmation with my students, and they always say, Miss Mathews, how are you always so happy? How are you always smiling? And I tell them, I said, well, I have bad days, but you didn't do it to me. You don't deserve to feel my bad days.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. And, through our words and actions, we also set our expectations, and we show them what, empathy is, and what, being a caring person, a positive person is. So that's wonderful. So if there was a new educator coming in, or, a counselor thinking about their program and, activities they'd want to do, or how to begin the social emotional learning work, what might be some tips that you would give them, or what advice might you give to someone who's trying to implement social emotional learning?
Share the power. I would say share the power. A child should feel welcome. They should feel like they have some ownership. A lot of times in education, we are being taught that classroom management is, this is my room and it's what I say goes. And I practice this is a shared space, and we take care of it because it belongs to all of us. So I believe one thing would be is to share the power, because they're still human. Yeah. And when they know that you're for them, they'll be more willing to work with you.
Yes. Yes. And, we hear it all the time when we have trainings and stuff about us having buy-in and us being a part of, and us being a team, to take that down to that level, to that classroom level, or that classroom guidance lesson when you're with those students, having them be a part of instead of talked at.
Yes, and students don't want to feel embarrassed. Students don't want to feel embarrassed.
No.
So when it is those moments, I'll pull you in the hallway. Hey, what's going on? You having a bad day? You having a bad day? Well, what is it? Is something you want to talk about? Do you need to go to the restroom? You need a moment? Okay, well, can I get you to do this? Just talking to them in a manner versus trying to put them on blast in front of their peers, it means all the world. The biggest thing is sharing that power, building those relationships. And I definitely would say have compassion in your heart.
Yeah, very true. And that goes back to you never know. I think of that picture that we always see with the icebergs, and it's just the tip out of the water. And then all that going on under the water, under sea level. You never know. And that one caring adult in their lives can make such a huge difference. And it can make a huge difference in that classroom management. It can make a huge difference when, they are with you instead of feeling like they're fighting against.
If teachers think about the teacher that made a difference in their life, whether good or bad, they already have their foundation. For me, I don't have many teachers that I feel support from. So I aim to be the teacher that I needed. I needed that, not because my parents didn't care, but because they were a little bit limited on their resources.
Yes.
And so I feel that had my parents and my school been able to do some kind of partnership together for the school to better understand my parents, the household that I was coming from, I feel like I could be even further ahead than what I am today. I live by saying rags to riches, and not because I grew up without, but I grew up without having all of the senses I needed in my educational setting. For me, I felt counted out in elementary when I was overlooked, I believe, for gifted and talented. I felt segregated against. I can recall all of these kids being pulled out and feeling like, well, what's wrong with me? Why was I not smart enough? And I know at that moment, that's when I checked out academically. I feel like, well, I'm just a regular kid anyways. And at a young age, I was able to process that. But had my potential been seen, because all children have the potential, and if we are having that parental engagement, we get to learn the child. And we can better communicate what that child needs. Brumford and Brunner said it best, we got this child, but this child got so much going on. They got their peers, they got their friends, they have their peers, they have their family, they have their religion, they have the mass media. Those things matter. Even me as an adult, I have to decompress from social media because there's so much heartache and tragedy that I sometimes feel overwhelmed with emotions for it's too much for me to consume.
Right. And you think about, a child who might not even know the vocabulary that's been, being thrown around. And just knowing that people look concerned and people are upset and people are yelling and, all kinds of things on media. And, and you were right, even bringing up peers, like, peers might act one way in the hallways, but on social media, it's something completely different. You think about those unfortunate stories we've heard of, students committing suicide because they're being bullied. And the parents are like, I had no idea. And it wasn't happening in school. It was happening through social media. So much is going on. And the reach of quote unquote other things is so much larger, and it's vast now for this generation. So it's incumbent upon us to really look at social emotional learning. And now is the time, if never before, that we are incorporating these things into our schools to take care of our students. It's a part of what we do.
Absolutely. And I believe COVID-19 highlighted that. I believe it highlighted that. But one of my biggest phrases right now is trauma beyond the pandemic. When I look at the community I serve, my students were in the pandemic before we were officially in the pandemic. And now that COVID-19 is starting to drift away some, we're not hearing about it as much. My students are still in that pandemic. The pandemic of poverty, the pandemic of opportunity gaps, the police, the school to prison pipeline. My students are still in a pandemic. So I like to say trauma beyond the pandemic. We talked about it. We talked about what our students needed while it was happening. But let's keep it going, because sadly it took this for you to know our students needed things. But now that you know, what are we going to do? How do we not know that our students don't have access to reliable broadband into a pandemic? How are some students have one-to-one technology, and then for others, you're now getting a Chromebook. For other students, now they're upgrading to MacBooks because they've been had that. So I think that our students started to realize their emotions, their social and emotional development was processed or highlighted during the pandemic. But I hope that we continue it and that we do not dismiss it like we did before.
Absolutely. The light was definitely shown. I work with mostly military population. with our military connected students. But I think about the fact, when they were talking about, when we first were talking about going remotely, and, you're talking about families with 3 or 4 kids and 1 computer. How is that going to work? So we had to, we got to get computers out. So it's like you said, now that we have ripped off the Band-Aid, let's not just put a fresh one over, a nasty wound. Yeah. Let's treat the wound. Let's deal with it.
Let's get some outside.
Yes.
I want to see the bubbles. I want to see it gone.
Absolutely.
Even if we got to get the alcohol, it's going to hurt a little bit.
Right.
It's going to sting, but let's deal with it.
Yes. Wonderful analogy. Definitely. Ms. Mathews, this has been a wonderful talk with you about social emotional learning. Do you have any parting words for us?
I do. I would just like to also share with the parents, nurture your children. It will really help encourage healthy growth and development. Teachers, it's our job, it's our duty to make sure that we are dealing with our whole child. Let's build those relationships with those parents. Parents, you are also responsible for our children's emotional, intellectual, and their social growth. Let's listen to our children. Let's give them time, encourage them to explore. Let's learn to accept them for who they are. Yes. Let's just really capitalize on the fact that they are our future and they need us.
Yes. Partnership is so important when we are working with our students. They're your child, they're our students, but they're our little people that we are taking care of. Definitely. Great words of wisdom there. Thank you so much, Ms. Mathews, for all that you've shared with us today. This is great information. And you can tell that you have a true love for what you do. And I'm glad that you were able to share that with us today.
Thank you so much again, Dr. Hudson, for having me. It has been a pleasure. I have enjoyed every moment. Thank you.